While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Reaching out to the 50 million Christ followers in America that are already in retirement or fast approaching retirement, you've tuned into I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, along with the founder of the Retirement Reformation, Bruce Bruinsma. Please check us out online, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. The Retirement Reformation is committed to encourage a movement where every Christ follower is confident in God's plan for a lifetime of faithful service and committed to helping the body of Christ reform its understanding of retirement and then bear fruit without measure during retirement. We assert the biblical truth that Jesus followers are called to bear fruit in every season of life and affirm that commitment with the 10 principles of the Retirement Reformation Manifesto. Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation, is here today to talk to us about principle number 5 of the manifesto, and that's love. Bruce Bruinsma, welcome back to I Retire for Him.
Jim, I love to be here.
Speaking about love, there's so many songs about love. We should really have had a song open us up today about love. Love is all you need. There's so many other ones. But, we're talking about this manifesto. Bruce, why don't you talk about why? Why the manifesto? Why the Retirement Reformation Manifesto?
Well, Jim, all of us need a roadmap. If we're going to go on vacation and we're going to go from here to there, you need to get a map out. You need to know where you are and you need to know where you're going. And so that roadmap is one of the functions, one of the roles of the Retirement Reformation Manifesto. It's a roadmap to remind us of what the 10 key issues are and to give us a new insight into how we can live our lives reflecting God's love and then being able to be encouraged in each one of those areas, in each one of those 10 areas of the manifesto. So when we brought 16 of us together and we spent a couple of days praying and seeing what God would have to say to us about this whole issue of retirement and our culture and the changes that were needed, the result that came out of that was the manifesto. And God just directed the thoughts, and just like He did the 10 Commandments when He put them on the tablets and gave them to Moses, through us, He gave us these 10 principles. And today we're dealing with principle number 5, which is in fact love.
I think it would be great, Bruce, on that fireplace behind you, for you to have chiseled into the fireplace the 10 principles of the Retirement Reformation Manifesto. Yes, we're going to talk about love today, the number 5 principle. You don't have to react to that, Bruce, but I'll look for it on our next podcast. Talk to us, though, when you actually go and talk to somebody who signed the Retirement Reformation Manifesto, what do they share with you about their experience after they've put their John Hancock at the bottom and said, I am going to live my retirement years according to what I understand and believe in the Retirement Reformation Manifesto?
Well, in the conversation with them, which are usually absolutely delightful, first of all, there's a sense of excitement because of a new insight, a new way of thinking about, and they may have been Christ followers for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but they never thought about it exactly this way during this time of their lives, during this 30-year period. And so there's a sense of excitement. There's also a bit of a sense of relief in that, wow, I got the right map. If you ever were, you needed a map and you pulled into the gas station, you went in and you grabbed a map and you paid them $4 for it and you got back in the car and You opened the dumb map up and it was the wrong map. You went, oh man, what a bummer. But when you got the right map and you can see where you are and where you're going, what a relief, because you don't have to worry about where it is that you're going. You just need to take the steps, expend the energy, and appreciate the impact.
All right, so principle number 5 of the Retirement Reformation Manifesto is love. What does love have to do with reforming our mindset about retirement?
Well, I don't know if you're like me, but every Valentine's Day, as it approaches, I'm thinking about what am I going to get for Judy? And I think about, candy, and I think about flowers, and I think about all these other things. And the thought comes to me, and this is after 59 years of marriage, that whatever I'm going to get is not going to be an adequate reflection of the love that I have for her. So she knows that, and God knows that. And so I get her a dozen red roses, and I bring them home, and I've only done that probably 52 times. Each time, the look on her face is like fantastic. And so those red roses represent so much more than red roses. Our love for God and our ability to express to Him our thankfulness for what He has done for us, that relationship then drives my activity for that next step of my life. So as we grow closer to God, He will continue to give us the capacity and the opportunity to do what? To revitalize valued relationships, that relationship with Judy as an example, and have greater kingdom impact on those He puts in our path. Because of my love for Judy, it is easier for me to love the people that God puts in my path as a reflection of that relationship.
So you're saying that God can really cultivate love in our hearts for others, for Him. Because of our love for Him, it cultivates in our hearts love for others. Do you really believe, though, that our capacity to love increases as we get older?
Absolutely. There is no question in my mind that it does. One of the things, it's interesting, I read a research study recently, and I think my basic intellect would say that as people grow older, their emotions, and love is an emotion as well as a decision, but that as we grow older, that our emotional content would diminish along with our age. The results of the study said exactly the reverse. It said that our emotions grow stronger as we grow older.
Yes, it's so
now,
true.
we become able to control those emotions with our emotional maturity, but they grow stronger. And so love being one of those, both a decision, an act, and an emotion, definitely can grow stronger as we grow older.
And when we come back, we're going to hear from one of those Retirement Reformation retirees whose life has been impacted by that increased capacity to love. You're listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. We'll be right back.
Membership has its privileges. And with the Retirement Reformation, it's true. We have 3 levels of membership to access our growing wealth of resources. We also provide discipleship and training to bring the Retirement Reformation alive in your life. So join us. Go to retirementreformation.org and click on the Membership tab. Choose the level of membership that will help you rethink, retool, reframe, and reform your retirement today. The basic level is free, so you can get started today. Take the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. retirementreformation.org. Let's get back to more I Retire for Him.
Hey, welcome back to I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberger. Of course, we're joined by Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. Bruce, you always bring on a fantastic guest for the middle segment of every podcast. Who do you have for us today?
Today, I've got a friend, Bill TAMULONIS, and Bill and I have known each other now for about 2.5 years, maybe 3. And the way that we met was we joined together because Bill was part of the Retirement Reformation Roundtable group that met here in Colorado Springs. Then the result of our gathering together was, in fact, the Retirement Reformation Manifesto. One of the reasons why I invited Bill to join us today is because he brings such a unique, researched perspective on the issues of aging and retiring and so on. So, Bill, just kind of give us a little bit of your personal background and how, in fact, God led you to the point of being the researcher and the person who probably understands as much as anybody in the country about what are the driving issues of those of us that are getting older.
Well, I had a career in market research when I graduated from college, and worked in a number of industries in banking and public utilities, was a consultant for a while, and always just had a curious mind. And always, my favorite part of reading a book or a magazine was the footnotes. You know, 'cause it would just put me on a trail of additional information. So I'm just kind of a lifelong learner. And about 20 years ago, through some contacts, got into the continuing care retirement industry. And so for the last 20 years, my research has been focused on older adults. And by that, I mean normally like age 75 and above. And so in that regard, through my thousands of interviews and focus groups and reading with them, I've really come to learn and love older adults, and I feel like I've had hundreds of mentors to help me with my own planning for the future. And so that's how I just got interested in the whole topic of retirement living, and that's why your Retirement Reformation was so attractive to me and drew me to be part of that group.
Well, your contribution is just huge and obviously appreciated. Let me ask you to do something for me. Just kind of think back over these last 20 years and all the different footnotes that you followed and the conversations that you've had and the research reports that you've both helped write and the research studies that you've been part of. Could you just grab maybe the top 2 most, oh my goodness, I never would have thought that kind of experiences in dealing with older people. In some of our other podcasts, we've talked about how often the way God organizes things is not the way the world organizes things. So there's these aha moments like, oh my goodness, is that really the way it works? Could you, I tried to give you enough language here so you had a time to think for a second.
Yeah.
And come up with what a couple of those might be.
Yeah, I can think of a couple right off the bat. And there are things that, in a way, maybe surprised me, but in another way, maybe I just didn't know, but have benefited from. And I would say the top one would be the importance of having a sense of purpose and meaning in life. And I think that's, or the way people have put it is, a reason to get out of bed in the morning and, that sort of thing. I know you refer to this a lot in your writings that especially for retirees, they need something more than leisure, than going on trips. That's great for maybe the first year or 2 of retirement. It's kind of an exhaling, a relief. But then they really need a sense of purpose to help them live longer, live healthier, and live better, happier lives. Those are inextricably linked in the research as factors that contribute to their overall health and well-being. Just having that sense of purpose and meaning. which certainly ties in with the gospel, ties in with, I think it goes back to Genesis 1 of, be fruitful and multiply, fill and subdue the earth. So it's kind of fulfilling that human job description, no matter how old you are. And then I think the second thing that maybe a little bit of a surprise was just the resiliency of that age group. We look at some of them and we think, oh, they're frail, they're weak, but mentally, emotionally, they're so strong. And that came up actually again in this whole COVID situation, where I was talking to people in their 80s and 90s every day, and I'm like, well, how are you handling this? And I remember one lady said, hey, I lived through Pearl Harbor, I can live through this. So it was like they've experienced so much, and in a way it's sad because it's it's loss and it's hardship and things like that. But that just makes them so resilient, and really I think a resource for me and the rest of us for how to handle difficult situations, whether it's a pandemic or loss of a loved one or just a disappointment or things like that. So they aren't rattled by things that we might think would rattle them or things that might rattle a younger person.
Well, I think that's so encouraging, and one of the roles of the Retirement Reformation is to be able to translate that reality into the lives of 20, 30, 40 million people, so that they can be encouraged and know that that's what's ahead. We often talk about the downhill slog of life, but yet as you share that emotional maturity and walking closer with God, that spiritual development are two elements. Let me just ask you one other question: is in your recent research and experience with COVID and so on, is there anything new that you're kind of seeing coming on the horizon that we should really be aware of that maybe we're not thinking about?
Well, I think I think in a positive way, it has caused people to think about what's important to them, and so I think some of these trends that have sort of been pushed forward by COVID and by having choices limited to us as far as what we can do and where we can go and who we can be with and et cetera. I think it has heightened a sense of what really matters, and that, hey, okay, maybe I don't need to eat out at a different restaurant every night, or maybe I don't need so many choices of things to do, and that if I'm looking for fulfillment and pleasure and happiness and joy in certain experiences, you find out, well, gee, I'm a lot happier with my immediate family. So things like that. So I think it's a sort of a resetting of priorities and sense of importance that might, I think, is a healthy step away from some of the materialism and some of the excesses that we may have fallen into when we had the luxury to do that. So when things are stripped away, you know what's really important to you.
Well, it's it's in a sense it's kind of like taking that step away and going to the cabin for a week,
right?
And just being with your wife or being with your husband, being with your direct family, being able to have time to read the Bible and pray and connect there. It is. So, Bill, let me just go to the third question, and that would be, you have as much knowledge about this time of life as anyone I know. What are you thinking about as the next steps in your life? What is that next? What does that next picture look like for you now that you have all this knowledge? Now, what's going to happen with it?
Well, this is, like I talked about having mentors over the years as I've interviewed people and gotten friendly with people. And one of the big things that they all taught me was that you got to think ahead about your retirement years, especially now when we, like as you mentioned, we've got this longevity bonus of, used to be maybe 5-10 years you'd be retired. Now it's more like 30. So it's you got to plan that ahead of time. That you can't just if you retire, if your last day of work is Friday, you can't wake up Saturday morning or Monday morning the next work day and say, well, all right, what do I do now? And so that has gotten me thinking ahead, where I've just started preparing for, okay, what am I going to do? Personally, I plan on working, maybe another 6 years or so. And so I've started taking some steps for, what I will do after that corporate life is gone. And so I'm starting to get ready now for that time period. And I think that will help in the transition, help make those next 30 years, set myself up for just a healthier and happier next 30 years, because I'll have a plan to put in place.
And I would just simply pray that I hope that the activities of the Retirement Reformation would be part of that plan.
Yeah.
And because you're such a valuable person with not only what you know, but who you are, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill TAMULONIS, for sharing your story, and thank you, Bruce Bruinsma, for another fantastic guest. We'll be right back with more on iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. Check us out online, retirementreformation.org.
The Retirement Reformation website, online at retirementreformation.org, has a growing number of resources designed to help you in what may be the most productive part of your life journey. Let the door open into your last third of life with meaning and purpose, which leads to freedom and joy. Set the loneliness aside and experience the encouragement and support you need through online courses, support groups, books, prayer guides, life direction studies, and webinars, all designed to help find the new direction already planned for you. God does have a plan. Let us help you discover what it is. Make the journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org and check out our resources tab. Now back to more I Retire for Him.
Hey, welcome back to I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. We're talking about principle number 5 of the Retirement Reformation Manifesto, and it's all about love. No, I'm not going to sing about it today, but I'll read you this. We acknowledge that people matter to God, and we cultivate our hearts for others. As we grow closer to God, He will give us the capacity and the opportunity to revitalize valued relationships and have greater kingdom impact on those He puts in our path. Bruce, so many retirees, as I've observed them, are not working on loving more people, but they're focused on all the hurt that others have caused them over the decades of their life. How can the Retirement Reformation help our retired friends move from drowning in bitterness to being a fountain of love?
Well, what a great question, and what a great way to frame that question. I think the answer to it, comes from that probably the most well-known verse in the Bible of John 3:16. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Can you think of a better reason to go from depression to hope? To go from feeling trapped and angry and cynical to being thankful and being and having a sense of freedom. And so to be able to be released from the bondage of our culture and our world into God's kingdom and His plan for us. Wow, we talk about it in a variety of different ways in the manifesto with a number of the different 10 elements. But when we go to the very heart of the matter, God is love. His commandment to us is to love others. And when we do that, we will bring glory to Him, where we reflect the teachings of Jesus, and we will be able to experience that contentment that we talked about last week with the fruits of the Spirit.
Revitalizing relationships that have some damage on them. They got a little scarring on them. They got a little bit of dirt and gunk on top of them. That's something that we all have to deal with. And as we get older, obviously we've had more relationships than if we were younger. Bruce, from your own perspective, as a man of quote unquote retirement age, although I know you're not retired, how have you worked to revitalize relationships that maybe got damaged in the past, whether it was of your fault or somebody else's fault?
It's amazing, Jim, how the Holy Spirit works, because by myself, I couldn't do it at all. But what I find happens is that it may be that I picked up my phone and I'm looking up somebody's number and somebody else's name comes up. There's a prompt. When that prompt comes, because it's someone who I haven't talked to in 3, 4, 5 years, maybe there was a strained relationship because of whatever the reason, right when that happens, make the call. Don't think about it. Don't fret about it. Just make the call. When you hear about, there's a person who I was really very, very close with. And we certainly not only did we drift apart, but there were some things that took us apart. And I would think about him periodically, but I didn't do anything about it. And just recently, he had COVID and was in the hospital. And a friend of mine said, well, do you know so-and-so? He's in the hospital with COVID. And boy, that just hit my heart. I said, if I don't do something about that now, I may never get a chance to do it again.
Right.
And so I think the real answer to the question is, when we are prompted or that opportunity comes in those broken relationships, make the call, write the note. It's not about how they're going to respond. It's about how your heart is freed because you've followed what God would have you do to express love to them. If they don't want to love you back, that is their choice. But you have freed yourself by taking that action.
And when we work on revitalizing relationships from our past that maybe are a little scarred, and a lot of times for our retired friends, it's family, because there's nothing more frustrating than, there's nothing more frustrating than family, our own kids or our grandkids or great-grandkids. How does revitalizing our relationships increase our capacity to love and therefore our kingdom impact?
Practice makes perfect, and loving practice brings greater love. So practice makes perfect, and practicing love brings greater love. It's one of those things that has an exponential curve to it, not a linear curve. Exponential means it's like, the old story of what would you rather have, a couple $100,000 or the value of a penny doubled every day. And you start thinking about it, it's a penny, it's 2 pennies, it's 4, it's 8, it's 16, it's 24, 30, and by the 9th day, you're up to $2 and you're going, well, that's just stupid. Why would I do that? But when you continue the process and the exponential growth curves, by the end of 30 days, you're at $1 million+ dollars. And so that's the way it is with love, is that it grows exponentially as we practice it, and it reduces exponentially as we don't.
Jesus told us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. As we get older, there may be a longer list of those people. How does this really work, and how can a lifestyle modeled after that, love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us, how can that impact our retirement? And how can Retirement Reformation help us? I know that was 3 questions, so First of all, is it even possible to do what Jesus said? Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you?
I think in our own human nature, the answer is no. But through the power of the Holy Spirit that He is given us to empower us, that is what allows us to do that. And when we take an initial step, let's say you got a list of 20 people and you take the first step, man, that's the hardest. But then again, back to my grandfather, once begun is half done. Okay, it works in this arena also. once you take a step and you get rid of your own pride, because that's really what keeps us from taking those steps. It's either our own pride or our own fear that we will be rejected. When in fact we know we are loved unconditionally by God and by His grace, then that fear of rejection can be continually set aside. And that's what allows us to be like the 72 that Jesus sent out, said, man, just go out and tell the people. If they don't respond well, shake the dust off your feet and go to the next one. Because the benefit is yours.
So how does Retirement Reformation help us help me work through that damage that I've got, those relationships that need revitalization so that I can be a lover in my retirement, so I can actually have my capacity to love increase? How do you guys help me do that?
Well, first of all, the realization that you got 30 years, so you got a bunch of time. Secondly, is that God has a call on your life. And that call on your life has two elements to it. Number one, it's specific and unique to you. In fact, you will be prepared to carry it out. And I guarantee you that the carrying out of God's call on your life will only be able to be accomplished if, in fact, it is done with love and the relationships are either healed or you have done your part, which will give you the freedom to take the next loving step.
What a phenomenal summary on principle number 5 of the Retirement Reformation Manifesto, love. Thank you, Bruce Bruinsma.
Thank you, Jim. I've loved being able to talk about this.
Check us out online. I encourage you to check us out online. Retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. Sign the manifesto when you're out there, but also take a look at all the other resources we have to offer you. We've got Bruce's books out there. We've got other classes you could take. You got membership things that you can do. There's so many resources and information out there that you could take advantage of. They're designed for you, that Christ-following retiree. Retirementreformation.org. You've been listening to iRetire4Him, the mouthpiece for the Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg. We've been joined, of course, by Bruce Bruinsma, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. We're just trying to help us all along in that journey from retirement to reformation so that in the end, we can say, I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and Retirement Reformation founder, Bruce Bruinsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.